I still have some ranunculus, I thought it might be quite nice to show you how to wire them. Now the reason that we wire them is the stems, if you've grown them, you'll probably know, the stems are quite delicate, and if they get bashed, they could bend and even snap. And that's not good if you're making a buttonhole, for example, when quite a lot of hugging goes on at a wedding. So we're going to use one of these small ranunculus flowers to start with and just show you how I wire them for extra strength so they will last the whole day. First things first, you want to make sure that you condition your ranunculus, which means just soaking them in a bucket of water for a few hours, preferably overnight. Please don't try and wire ranunculus that's just been picked, because it will probably wilt on you. So I've got a little glass vase here, and I've got some ranunculus flowers. Now you might also like a little bit of foliage perhaps to go with your buttonhole. So I have picked euonymus. You will probably have some of this in the garden. It's a very common low growing shrub. I absolutely love it. And I have also conditioned this. This has been conditioned all day. So for wiring, the first thing you're going to need is some floristry wire. This is 0.7 of a millimetre. It's quite a long length. I've cut it in half for now, but I'll probably cut it down again a bit later once we finish the buttonhole. Then you're going to need some floristry tape to hold your flower and foliage together. This is paper tape. This is my favourite way of making buttonholes, and it's excellent for beginners. You can get a waxy tape, but the paper tape is much easier to use. Please do not buy the cheap paper tape that you can find online. It's not worth it, it doesn't stick. This is from Oasis Floral, and it's the one I prefer to use. Then here, I've got some anchor tape. So you're only going to need this if you're going to secure your buttonhole to a magnet or a corsage clip, which I'll show you in a second. And then once you've made your buttonhole, you're probably going to want to cover this tape up with either some ribbon or some twine. So on to the methods of attaching your buttonhole. These are floristry pins. Traditionally, you've probably seen those used a million times. They are good, they're very cheap, so you could just use floristry tape and a pin, and that's fine. We're going to do the wiring today because otherwise the flowers might bend. But otherwise, I prefer these corsage clips because they stop the buttonhole from slipping, so you won't end up with upside down buttonholes for the photograph. And all you do is you make your buttonhole. I will show you exactly later. You make your buttonhole, you attach it to the corsage clip, and then it's like a badge, and it just pins on your lapel or your dress. If you're wearing a fancy dress, you might not want holes in your outfit, so you could use these. These are magnets. They're very strong, look. So if I pull these ones apart, we just want those two there. So the idea is you attach your buttonhole or your corsage to this clip in the same way as we did with the corsage clips, and then you pop the other magnet inside your outfit, and then it stays in place without damaging your lovely dress. Okay, let's get started. So what we're going to do is we're going to bend the wire in half, but not equally in half. We're going to bend it so that one length is slightly longer than the other. That is because we're going to put it through the centre of the flower, and it's difficult to get both bits of wire through accurately at once. So I like to leave a length longer so I can tackle one piece of wire at a time. Let's start with this lovely ranunculus. The first thing to do is to cut it down to a sensible size so that we can make it into a buttonhole. So I think about down to there. We will cut it again shorter because that's quite long for a buttonhole, and then I'll put the rest of this back in water. So I'm just giving the floristry wire a bit more of a bend so that it's nice and small when it goes through the centre of the flower. I'm going to just separate it out. We're going to take our flower. Hopefully you can see this, and we're going to look for the very centre. If you can blow on it, that tends to open it up a little bit. And then place your wire just one side of the flower. So it's going to go through the flower head and then out the other side. So what we want to do is we want to get each piece of wire the opposite side so that they're basically holding the stem securely. So let's get on and do that. So I've pushed that side through. So now I want to push this side through the flower. Here it comes, through the other side. I'm just going to push it down, push it down, push it down. Be really gentle as you do this. Push it down. And then I'm just going to really gently, let me pull it up for you so you can see it, just gently pull. And you should see that it's just about disappeared. And now you can't see it at all. But you do have the flower secure and your two pieces of wire either side. So the next job is to tape all of this together. So I'm going to take my floristry tape and then pop it up as close as I can to the flower head. Now if you do this wrong, don't worry, it took me a while to get the knack. So what we're doing is we are pulling slightly, don't pull too hard otherwise it'll rip and then I'll have to start again, but it doesn't matter. So pull it slightly, that will release the glue, and then you can make it stick to itself. So we want to pull it quite tightly, being gentle with the flower. Let me come closer. And I'm just winding it around and keeping the wires either side of the stem. As I say, this is quite long for a buttonhole, but we can cut the stem and the wires down once we're finished. You could leave it really long if you're making them for the day before, and then you'll make sure that you keep the flower well away from the water so it won't spoil. Okay, here we go. Doing really well. I'm pulling and I'm twisting and I'm pulling and I'm twisting. There we go, I'm almost at the bottom, so that will do. So I'm just going to give that a tug. That will break, and I will wrap it round, and there we go. A wired ranunculus. So now if it gets bashed, the head will not droop because it's super secure. Next we're going to add some foliage. So you want a really nice slender stem and you don't want any excess foliage. So I'm just going to pull that off just gently because you only want a few leaves at the very top to go with the flower, and you don't want it, the buttonhole, to be too bulky. There we go. That looks really nice. So for this demonstration, let's just stick with one piece of foliage, and we can do in a more advanced one another time. Okay, so your foliage is in place, and we're just going to gently do the same thing when we wire the ranunculus. Now, if you are a bit more experienced and had a bit of a practice, then you could wire the foliage and the wires at the same time. But as a beginner, it's best to do one job at a time so you don't overwhelm yourself. Can you see? Just bring it nice and close to the camera. There we go. You can see they're just becoming one now. And you can drop this into water. The water will get through the tape, and if a little bit gets unstuck, you can just go back and go over it. There, that looks lovely, doesn't it? So we've got our flower and we've got our foliage. Now you can, if you want to, just trim this down and then use a pin to attach it to your outfit as we discussed before, but I'm going to show you how to use the Corsage clip. Okay, so we're going to take our clip and I'm just going to position it under the head of the flower, because the idea is it goes into position and then you can't see it. So next I'm going to take just a tiny piece of the pop tape or anchor tape. You can see it's quite thin, it's thinner than the green tape. Now an experienced florist probably wouldn't need to do this, but as beginners, and if you're doing your wedding flowers for the very first time, you want to make sure that your buttonholes are bulletproof. So this anchor tape is stronger than the green tape, and then it will secure the corsage clip a bit better. There we go. So the next thing we want to do is just cover up the anchor tape with a little bit of green tape, and then I'll take the green tape all the way down to the bottom to completely hide the clip. Then on the morning of the wedding, all you need to do is lift out your buttonhole and make sure you dry it properly on a towel, especially if you're going to use ribbon to cover. But otherwise, just cut it down, and to keep it simple, the green tape is absolutely fine. So it's completely up to you whether you want to cover it or whether you want to leave it. If you're wanting to make a corsage, it's exactly the same. You're just going to add some more flowers to it. So let's wire one more flower for you, just so you've got a really good handle on it. So just blow in the centre to get that to open up slightly. There we go. I've got my piece of wire with one end longer than the other, and I'm just going to slip it inside, move my fingers out of the way, and then get the other side. There we go, that's through the base of the flower. Push it through, gently pull until the wire disappears from view. Still see a tiny bit more. There we go. That's just about gone. Put the wire into place. Green tape, and you can go straight in if you want to with your Corsage clip. There we go, this is the magnetic one. Tape. Let's just move that up slightly. Bear in mind that these poor flowers have been through the mill, so these are not freshly picked and conditioned. They've been in other arrangements already. Well, I thought they'd be perfect for the demonstration. So as close as you possibly can to the stem, through one side and then through the other. There we go, just really, really gently push it slow as you can, because you don't want to upset the flower. Push, push, push. The wire's coming through the back. Just gently, gently, gently. And then once it's through the top, can you just see it? I'm just going to pull gently from underneath. Be really careful that you don't give it a hard tug, because otherwise the whole wire will come out the bottom of the flower, and that's not what you want. There we go, it's disappeared from view, we can't see it anymore, and it's really close to the stem. So that is perfect. So time now to give this one a tape. So next we're going to tape it as we've done before, just as far up the top as you possibly can get. Just slide it up there, and then just pull gently, keeping the wires in place, twisting. The taping is probably the hardest thing to learn. I watched loads of videos when I was learning, and I couldn't quite see what they were doing, because they were stood back at a table facing me, which was nice. Obviously you can see their faces, but actually you couldn't see their hands. So that's why I'm doing it this way. I've chosen my first piece of foliage and positioned it in place. Now, if you're experienced, what you would do is just place all the flowers in place and just tape it once. However, there is nothing wrong as a beginner just doing one at a time. The worst that's going to happen is the buttonhole is going to be a tiny bit bulky, but you're going to be using your own garden flowers. It's just going to look fabulous anyway. So let's do that. Let's just do one little bit of tape just to keep this piece of foliage in place, because otherwise when it slips it's really annoying. There we go. So that's not going anywhere. That's not secure enough to leave forever, but that's enough while you find your next flower, and then just decide where it's going to go in position. I'm just positioning my second flower in place. Now when wiring, you can actually remove the whole stem and just rely on the wire, and that will make it an awful lot less bulky. But as a beginner, and you're going to want to keep the flowers hydrated, because you're not going to be doing this on the morning of the wedding. You're not a florist and you haven't done this 500 times before. So it's going to be a little bit more bulky than it would be when done by a professional. But of course you can cut the stems. You can cut them really short right up here, but that needs to be done the morning of the wedding. And as a beginner, you're probably going to want to get these done the night before. So let's just hold that in place and get green tape. I'm going to secure it a little bit lower to start with, just to make sure it doesn't move. And then you can work your way up, up, up. And you don't want to make it too tight, otherwise you'll squish the flower. And then you can just work your way back down again. Oops. Didn't quite get that bit of stem. There we go. That's better. So down, down. You can see the shortness in this stem. So you want to make sure when you cut it, you cut all of the stems to this length. Otherwise this guy won't get any water. So that'll probably do. I'll take my snips and I'll give it a good chop so everybody's the same length. Again, this is a bit too long for the day, but you can trim it down later. But that's plenty long enough to go in a little vase of water so it won't droop overnight. It'll be nice, fresh as a daisy. Okay, let's do our magnets, shall we? Let's pull those apart. So this is the piece that we want. And it's actually smaller than the Corsage Clip, so it's going to be a lot easier. So I'm just going to position that at the back with the magnets facing outwards. A tiny piece of anchor tape. So just make sure that is in the right position. Ready. A little bit of anchor tape around it. Pull it nice and tight so this clip is securely in place and it's not going to move anywhere. So it's nice and straight. That is solid. There we go. So now I'm just going to go over it with the green paper tape. I really need to do a fast version of this for those that don't want to go through all the detail. However, when I was learning, I would like to see all the detail over and over again. Yes, please, because doing flowers for a wedding for the very first time is nerve-wracking, and it's somebody's special day. It's the best day of somebody's life, and you want to make sure that your responsibilities are taken care of and you're not stressing. Okay, so that's now done. This can go in a vase of water overnight. The clip is there. So all you need to do the following morning is cover the green tape with twine or ribbon if you want to, but frankly, it looks lovely as it is. And then trim the stems down and the wearer can just drop this little magnet in their dress, and then from the other side, it will just snap into position. The magnets are really, really strong. There we go, look at that. So there we have a buttonhole and a corsage. I'll just drop them in the water. Super simple, and you can do them the night before and relax. Fast forward 24 hours and here are our buttonholes. I've trimmed them down now. They're nice and dry, ready for a ribbon if you want to. And they're actually looking better than they did last night because they've had a chance to rehydrate and get over all that fiddling about while we were arranging. Fast forward 3 or 4 hours, I've just been doing some more videos for you to come later, and I just wanted to show you the importance of wiring your ranunculus. So these have not been wired and they have been out of water for the same time, and they are slowly starting to lose vigour because of the lack of water. If you look at this one here, look at that, that's really on the droop. It'll be fine. I'll recut stem to reopen the capillaries, put it in some water and it will perk up, but that's not what you want in a buttonhole. You need it to last all day. So let's compare that to our wired buttonholes, which have been out of water at the same time. Look at that, rock steady. They are not moving an inch. So that is why, if you're going to use ranunculus for your buttonholes, and why not, they are beautiful, it is a good idea to wire them. Wedding flowers can take a really long time to do, and they're time critical because you can't start too early. However, a little hack which you can start weeks ahead of time is to use our pot stocks as table arrangements. You can just leave them to grow, and it really doesn't matter how far ahead they are in flowering. They're going to look fantastic whatever you do. You can even cover the soil with something fancy if you want to. Look at that, absolutely beautiful. This is a little tin bucket, so you could give these away as wedding favours to your guests. If you fancy something just a little bit more elaborate, how about this? I've got 4 of my pot stocks in this container, and the good thing about the pot stocks is they start flowering in their trays, so you can pick the colours exactly for your design.